Oh, hi there! Welcome to another episode of the Okanagan Gardener and Forager channel. It's the winter, so it's a little harder to find wild edibles than the rest of the year, but you can still find some. So I'm going to show you 5 wild edibles you can still find in the winter. These plants that I'm going to show you probably aren't going to be enough that you could get fat off of them, but maybe in a survival situation or for short term, they could help, or they could supplement what you have otherwise. And some of the things that I'm going to mention vitamin C more than once because something that I think would be helpful in the winter, maybe when you aren't getting as much fresh fruit and vegetables, some vitamin C could be very helpful to boost the immune system and keep you going through the long winter. Let's go find some wild edibles now. The first wild edible you can still find in the winter is curly dock, or Rumex crispus, and it's the seeds that I'm talking about. Curly dock is also known as yellow dock or sour dock. The seeds can be gathered starting in autumn, but they persist long into the winter. And if you can look closely at them, they're three-sided, and they have like a bulbous side on one, and they're kind of heart-shaped. And the seed is in the middle, but it's got these three-sided papery edges that are heart-shaped. See the bulbous seed side on one side, and if I can manage to turn it, it doesn't have it on the others. And the stem has these vertical lines on it. Now, they are a good source of iron and protein. And the hull, which is on it, it can be left on, and it's a good source of fiber. And what you can do with it, the seeds can be roasted or used dry, and they can be boiled into a mush. And it can be ground. They can be ground into a flour, or it can be added to other flour to supplement some flour that you might have. And you can use that to make all kinds of things like bread, muffin, crackers, soups, or like added to soups and stews and sauces. Number 2, wild edible you can still find in the winter, Staghorn Sumac, Rhus, typhina. There's no leaves left to help you identify, but you can look at the branches, which are covered in these velvety hairs. Kind of like a stag's horn, I suppose, is where the name came from. And the berries persist long into the winter. And they are a source of vitamin C, or they can be, and you can use them to make like a lemonade type drink. Soak them in water and they taste pretty lemony. These have been out for a while, so they look a little rough compared to maybe how they did in the summer, but they still do have flavor, and they still are a source of vitamin C. So take the berry clusters and soak them in water, and you can still have that lemony drink. And they can also be used to cook to make like jellies, or say a lemon flavored pie. One thing I like to do with them, if I'm out somewhere walking, you just take like a few, and if you're like really thirsty or something, you can just chew on them. And they really quench your thirst. Yeah, compared to the summer, they don't have as much flavor because they've been snowed on and rained on and whatnot. But still tastes sweet and lemony to me. Number 3, wild edible you can still find in the winter it's a twofer, trees. 2 of them, Ponderosa Pine. All those over there are Ponderosa Pine, Pinus ponderosa. And up close here, there's one, this one here, is a Douglas fir, Pseudotsuga menziesii. I'll show some more up close after. But anyway, they are edible in a few ways. One is the cambium of both are edible. And one, well, over here I'll show you something I thought was interesting. The Ponderosa pine was traditionally eaten by indigenous groups, usually in the spring when the sap is running. It tastes better, and you can see it looks like that's sort of what somebody has done here. And so this is the outer bark. The cambium would be here. That's all gone. and this is the true wood on the inside. And the cambium is part of the tree's vascular system. So if it was removed only from, say, one side and not the complete circumference of the tree, then the tree could have cambium harvested and still survive. Some other parts of the trees that are edible are both of Douglas fir and Ponderosa pine needles can be used to make a tea, which contains vitamin C. And this is a controversial topic. I've covered it before, but particularly related to Ponderosa pine. Some people say it's toxic, and should both of them, I'll say, evergreen needles shouldn't be used in large amounts or for prolonged use. It can irritate the kidneys and should be avoided by pregnant women and things of that nature. So, take that for what it's worth. But I will also say that, yes, some people say Ponderosa pine is safe. I've had it. I think it tastes pretty good. And yeah, if you're looking for some vitamin C during the winter, then both of these could be a source. And another source of food could be the seeds in the cones. And they are edible, but it's a lot of work to get them out and maybe not really worth the effort. Just a couple quick points about identifying Douglas fir and Ponderosa pine. This is Douglas fir cones that you're looking at. They hang below the branches in the tree. And let's see if I can't show a little more. Okay. Where did I put it? Okay. Here is a Douglas fir, some Douglas fir needles from the top side. It's green, but if you look at the needles from the bottom side, you can see, hopefully you can see, there are two white lines that run the length of the needles. And this is a cone, and there are little three-pronged bracts that stick out between the scales. And it looks like, kind of like, a mouse's backside sticking out. So imagine there's one leg, and there's another leg, and that's the tail. A mouse's backside. There's looks like a bunch of little mice sticking out of the cone. And here's Ponderosa pine needles. They're just typically in groups of 3, very long. And a cone. They have little spikes at the end of the scales. Number 4, wild edible you can still find in the winter, juniper. This one here is Rocky Mountain juniper, Juniperus scopulum. There's a bunch of other junipers that you can find, and they actually hybridize, so they could be a little bit hard to distinguish them, but they have scale-like leaves, and sometimes the new growth can have kind of needle-like. See if I can find some. Look, with some needles on them. There, you can sort of see. And the trunk gets grows a lot of knots on it, and gets these strips that can be peeled off. Now, the edible parts, edible and potentially medicinal, are these berries, which we call berries, but they're not actually berries. They're cones. They take a couple years to grow, and they have a bunch of potential edible and medicinal uses. Some indigenous groups would cook the berries into a cake, dry it, and use it later in the winter. The roasted berries have also been used as a coffee substitute and been chewed to suppress appetite and hunger. I guess appetite and hunger are kind of the same. Anyway, they have medicinal uses as well. They could be used to make a tea or a tincture, which can help with kidney and bladder infections. Also been used to help aid digestion, reduce swelling and inflammation, and settle upset stomach. A little warning about juniper berries, though: if you have known kidney disease or if you're pregnant, then you should avoid consuming juniper. The fifth wild edible that you can still find in the winter is mountain ash, Sorbus species. And this one here is western mountain ash, Sorbus scopulina. It's getting dark, so I had to use a light for this, so hopefully it doesn't affect the color too much. But the berries persist long into the winter, and if they still have leaves on them, there could be 9 to 13 leaflets that are pointed leaflets with toothed edges. And the berries can be eaten raw or cooked. They're bitter, but they get sweeter as they go into the winter and freeze and thaw multiple times. And these ones are pretty dimply. They've frozen and thawed a lot of times, and I had to go to 3 different trees to find some that still had them on them because the birds really like them. And you can eat them raw or cook them, and they can be used to make jam or jelly or pies, ale, or bittersweet wine. And they also, they're high in vitamin C, and they contain flavonoids that are said to be they're flavonoids and they're immunostimulating. A little warning about them though is the seeds contain cyanogenic glycosides, and they can convert into potentially toxic substance in the body, and large quantities eaten at one time could be toxic. They're not really they don't taste that great, but later they get sweeter, still kind of bitter. So anyway, those are 5 edible wild edibles that you can still find in the winter. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.